Hello everyone and welcome to Big Talk. Of course, tonight we'll be frankly speaking on the issues, much of the issues surrounding the nation, and of course concerning all of us, which among issues has been the leads fight against corruption. The past administration had it as a cardinal point, but the statistics are still very different if President Buhari had done something regarding corruption. Let's discuss, of course, if it's possible to make progress in the fight against corruption. Don't forget that last week the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission held a multiple stakeholders national dialogue to address the challenges of youth involvement in cybercrimes with the theme Youth, Religion and the Fight Against Corruption. Dr. John Mamov, chairman of Channels Television Media Group, explored the role of religion as a tool of redirecting the minds of young people away from the snare of cybercrimes. They had other invitees, including vice chancellors of Nigerian universities, rectors, provosts of other tertiary institutions, religious leaders, youth organizations, civil society, and core members. And of course, they had the high point of launching an interfaith preaching and technical manual. The vice president of the country was there representing the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the event. All of this was in a bid of the Efcc chairman to tackle the issues of corruption in the country. Tonight, joining me for the discussion of the issues of corruption the country is still facing us as a strong cankerworm is the public relations lead of the Center for Fiscal and Transparency Watch. Mr. Victor Agi, good to have you join us on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, let's just get it started. Look at the EFCC National Dialogue that took place in Abuja. We had religious leaders, we had lecturers, university vice chancellors, youth organizations, civil societies, and it seems they were just doing a blame game over the event, other than giving us a direction, or other than addressing the national issues. And of course, they even pointed hands towards some religious leaders, which will go into that discussion. Talk about that national dialogue that EFCC held last week.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me always. The national dialogue is a welcome development. Of course, it is one of the ways the administration is trying to gather stakeholders' input in the fight against corruption. And so it is not out of place to have the calibers of persons that we have in that dialogue, come share their opinion about how we can fight corruption. And so it's a welcome development. But most often, why we get the fight against corruption wrong is the elitist nature of some of these conferences. And so if we gather so many elites in Abuja to attend such conference, of course, we also had some persons coming from the subnational level states, government coming for that conferences. So what next? That is the question. And so if you go to my village, for instance, you ask how many people get to know about the conference, how is the takeaway from this conference actually being cascaded, to the local level. That is another discussion. But talking about the outcome of the conference, like you said, I don't think the country is ready to really have a frank conversation, when it comes to the fight against corruption. And so each time you have government officials gather, to discuss corruption, there's always this pushback. There's always the blame game of who should be responsible for what. And until we sit down as a nation to really assess who is responsible for what and who should lead the fight against corruption, then we will not make progress. Well, I am not personally a fan of those who think that government should lead the fight against corruption. But again, everything rises and falls on leadership, Yeah. And so that is why some persons may be justified to think that the government should lead the fight against corruption. But what we have been seeing, especially with government officials talking about the fight against corruption, is just to push the blame to some quarters. Sometimes, like the conversation you mentioned, the focus was on the youth, how the youth are the one,
issue of cybercrime.
And you begin to issue of cybercrime. Of course, is a germane issue. We should talk about the fact that our youth are into get-rich-quick syndrome, and of course, most of them are. Some of them, please, are involved in cybercrime, because of course, if you check the percentage of Nigerian youth who are into cybercrime, it's actually a minute percentage of Nigerian youth who are into cybercrime. Yeah, and so we should have that conversation, but that is not the reason for grand corruption. the problem that we have in the country today when it comes to corruption is the issue of gun corruption, which is the issue, corruption that involves government officials. Are the youths the ones in government looting the money? The answer is no. And so when we gather like this, we expect that people should actually say truth to power, they should look at each other in the face and tell themselves the truth when it comes to grand corruption. In 2022, the Efcc in question actually came out to say that they prosecuted over 2,000 cases in the year 2022, thereabout. And if you check the list of those cases, of course, the majority of those cases were cybercrime, related cases. And you begin to wonder what happens to grand corruption, the trillions of, naira. This morning I was reflecting on how the former Accountant General of the Federation, he was allegedly involved in 109 billion, naira case.
Were you surprised?
And up till now, we are not sure where the direction of the case is going and all of that. So are we saying that Mr. Ahmed Idris, who allegedly, of course, in connivance with other officials, looted that money, is a youth? He's not a youth. And so I like to see a government, especially when these conversations are held, telling themselves the truth, to be frank about some of these things. It is not the youth that is the problem. So we shouldn't push, blame to the youth. I'm not saying that the youth are entirely exonerated from the conversation, in the fight against corruption, but they are not the problem. Every one of us is the problem.
Every one of us is the problem. Let's take a look at the word of the Sultan of Sokoto, His Excellency Abubakar III said. To fight corruption, he made mention of this at the event. To fight corruption, you have to begin with the quality of people you appoint into government. If you are appointed to government, somebody is known to be corrupt all his life and think you will turn a new leaf in 4 years, you must be deceiving yourself. That is coming from Sultan of Sokoto. Of course, the event had other religious leaders. Talk about its statement. Meaning, after 4 years, government recruits people into government. Look at the recent one at the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, where the minister has been alleged of so much of $1 million, carted away in the process of trying to, solve the issues of poverty alleviations in the country. So it means that government appoints people into offices, and these are the people that have track records of corruption. And these are the people to be the leaders, because you said the leaders has a role to play. So they are leading you, but they have tendencies, or they have had, track records of corruption. Can we really say that we have leaders in this country?
Well,
with the mindset of all of this?
Yeah, well, the truth is that you can't really give what you don't have. We must start, by really interrogating who are leaders. And so the kind of persons you see being appointed can be said to be somehow the same as the people who are leading. And so the statement by the Sultan is very apt. You can't afford to appoint people who have track record of corruption cases. There are a lot of them. When we saw the ministerial list, and we were like, this government does not have any agenda to fight corruption, because of the kind of faces we...
You didn't see that coming? You didn't see that list of appointment coming?
Not like I didn't see that coming, but I wasn't thinking that, it will be so blatant, putting some list for political settlement or whatsoever reason, in the list, and you expect to fight.
And these are the people that own the ministry. They are the ones that are the drivers of the sectors.
Absolutely. So it's really a concern that the government, well, true to the current administration, it never campaigned on the heels of the fight against corruption
compared to President
Buhari. And so we shouldn't expect so much from him in terms of the fight against corruption. But there is so much he can achieve if he is not decisive, in this fight against corruption. And so that is why we expect him to lead by the example. That is not to say that some of the agencies are not, fighting corruption under his watch, right? But we expect more. We can't have a government, the current situation in the country. Everyone is today in Mina, in Niger State. Some persons were actually protesting, because of the hardship in the country. And so all of these are a cumulative effect of the corruption that we are not ready to fight. And so if he's really ready to actually assuage the suffering of Nigerians, then he must be interested in the fight against corruption. And so leadership is very, very important to answer your question in the fight against corruption. The kind of persons you recruit, to man certain ministries, department and
must be taken into consideration.
Government must be taken into consideration if you really want to fight corruption.
Now, what is the worst? Because many people, when they talk of corruption, many people do not understand, the implications of corruption. It's as if it's about EFCC going after, those Yahoo, some people that they call the Yahoo boys, the young guys are into cyber crimes, or going after politicians of our opposition parties, or going after some motives that is not in tandem to what, the commission was really saddled with. And one may ask, what is the worst scenario that could happen, if issues of corruption is not properly addressed in this country?
We are actually facing the worst scenario.
Is there anything worse that will be worse than this?
Well, I can't imagine that we go worse than this, honestly. We're already facing, and it's a result of unchecked corruption, public sector corruption. Today, I was reading about the forest crisis, where the CBN governor was alluding to the fact that the so-called 7-point-something billion in forex that the country is owing, about 2-point-something out of that money is fake. That is corruption. And so some persons in the government actually colluded with the system to make the country pay as much as over 2 billion in forex, to whoever, And so these are some of the results of corruption. Today, we are buying fuel at 670 or thereabout because of corruption. Imagine that the subsidy, so-called subsidy regime, the monies were effectively used, won't be having this issue of fuel crisis. And do you also know that there is there's subsidy in the current price of fuel?
Absolutely.
Most people don't even know.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we are paying as much as 670 or thereabout for a liter of fuel, and government is still subsidizing that price. It is a result of corruption. And so corruption is the reason why our schools are the way they are. Corruption is the reason why our naira is chasing dollar at about 1,500 as last week, closing over 1,500. Corruption is the reason. And so corruption is everywhere. Corruption is the reason why people are protesting in Niger State today. Corruption is the reason why there is kidnapping, insecurity, And so corruption is everywhere, and is
the reason I asked that question was so that people can begin to know that the fight against corruption is not just for instance, your center is doing a lot of jobs, fighting against corruption and with other centers. So the Nigerians or people begin to know that it's not about us. It's not about us. It's not about one person. It's about your future. It's about the now. And of course, it's about even the development of this country. Owing to the fact of all of these that we've seen, recently we've seen the issues of our government and also in our CBN or some quarters of government, the presidency advising that Nigeria should begin to patronize a local product as a result of trying to give strength to the issue of naira and dollar. But these are the same people that during the elections, they were using our dollars to pay the party again, the party officials in the conduct of election. And we may begin to ask, are these people really patriotic enough? And, we've seen leaders are failing. We've seen that party officials are failing, and the presidency is also failing on its part. When the former vice president of the country is advising the presidency, and the presidency, instead of him to address the issues, is going about, trying to reply to whosoever is actually. So the fight within the government space is not giving strength, to the normal Nigerians to come out of this. Issues of dollar, come back home. What are the index? What are the statistics? How do we give energy to a dollar? To a naira?
Well, I am not an economist, so I'll be speaking from a layman perspective. And of course, while
are the government officials are they also contributing to the state that we have today?
Absolutely.
And what has ICPC done?
Absolutely. You just mentioned one important issue during the primaries, presidential primaries, and even governorship primaries across the state. Our center, we were doing a project tracking, election spending at the time, and so we're interested in how much, people, politicians actually spend during elections. And you'll be surprised, even though we couldn't develop the database the way we wanted, but the data that we collected at the time, you'll be surprised how much you know, politicians were willing to give agents of party, I mean, people who go for some of these primary elections, you know, just to buy their votes. Dollars, you know, and so we have dollarized our own economy. In Nigeria, people spend dollars, and so you hear stories of people using dollar to pay for rent. In Nigeria, you hear people using dollar. You see on social media where people spray dollars.
An event. In an event
in this same country. And so how do you expect the Naira to compete in that kind of environment? So there are actually layman answers and steps to take, you know, in order to address the dollar issue. Of course, the CBN is...
They're trying to push blame. You know why I'm asking this question? They're pushing blame to Nigerians. They're saying that we failed to buy the local cars, like innocent cars, that we failed to patronize local products. They are painting the whole picture to be that Nigerians are the causes of where we are.
You know, when we started, I talked about the fact that government has normalized pushing blame to people and, you know, shielding themselves of any blame, you know, in the processes, and becoming more patriotic, in quotes, while every other person is unpatriotic, you know. But these facts are there. You know, there was a policy introduced by the former president, President Buhari, where borders were closed, and of course it was to actually see how we can boost local consumption and production of rice. I will ask you a question. What happened to that policy? You know, Nigeria began to consume local rice, but did that affect the prices of rice locally? No. So I am not so much of the view that why some of these things, I mean, the dollar is gaining over the Naira, is entirely because we are consuming. How many Nigerians actually have the money to consume foreign products? So you begin to ask yourself,
who are those?
Who are those people who are actually consuming those foreign products? And so the majority of Nigerians whom these messages, some of these patriotic, so-called patriotic messages are targeting, do not even consume, do not even have the wherewithal to purchase foreign products. You know, and so for those of them who even have the wherewithal to purchase foreign products, the government is taxing them. The government is collecting tax on those. At a time too, I also know that the government actually increased VAT on foreign products. And so if government is putting some of these measures in place to check, you know, the over-reliance of foreign products, then we shouldn't be saying that, you know, the consumption of foreign products is why the Naira is... It is one of the reasons, it is part of the reason, but it is not entirely the reason. And even if it is the reason, the people that are involved are the ones telling us not to do it. And so it is ironical that government officials who can spend dollars to buy election, you know, are the ones now telling us not to. And how many Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians, in the real sense of ordinary Nigerians, actually have the money to chase after those foreign products? Absolutely, they are, you know. So it is the elite that should be talking to themselves if they are really ready, you know, to fight the dollarization of the economy, which of course is biting hard on everybody. You know, if you go to the market, you want to buy something, they say dollar is high. So everything is actually tied to the dollar. So the dollar effect is affecting everybody. So we hope that some of the measures that the CBN is taking will assuage the problem. Yesterday we issued a press release at the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch. And what are we asking for? We ask the CBN to publish the names of the beneficial owners of Bureau de Change operators, because that is another place where we don't even know what is happening. We don't have data about how much, who are even these operators, how many Bureau de Change operators do we have in Nigeria. We don't have those data. How much is being paid to these people every month? Of course, you have heard stories of trade arbitrage by...
Because these people, they always have dollars.
They always have dollars. So you
go to bank, bank will not have dollars, but they
always have. So there's a collusion between some persons in the system, CBN, to be, you know, straight about it, and these people, you know, who always have dollars. And so we are asking government to, I mean the CBN now, to publish the names of the beneficial owners of this Bureau de Change owned operators, so that we really know who exactly is benefiting from the corruption in that, you know, system, and how come they are not complying with anti-money laundering law, you know, that require them to do all of, because there are a lot of violation of this, of some of our laws, whereas nobody is talking about them. So I hope that government will really is really ready to address the dollarization this time around.
All right, the last conversation tonight, and look at your survey corruption is now becoming something living within Nigerians. You know, people just feel that there's nothing that can be done, and by virtue of that, it means that young people, you know, now see cybercrime to be lucrative on just in a minute. What would the young people learn? Because you look at what our leaders are doing, the young people do not see any motivation, you know, to do the right thing, or the quick rich syndrome is actually leading the right way. What then should the young people now learn, you know, in a drive, you know, to get anti-corruption, you know, in the country?
This is our country. We have no other country. Even if you travel to anywhere, you still come back one day. And so we should understand that we have only one Nigeria. And as such, we should be patriotic enough. You know, there is a problem of many Nigerians being power away from corruption. And so if you give power to many Nigerians, they will act corruptly. And so it's a systemic problem. So we hope that Nigerians will understand that this is our country. Until we are willing, or until we settle down to fix the problems, it will keep multiplying and it will affect every one of us. Thank you.
Many thanks, Victor Agi, the Public Relations Lead Officer of the Center for Transparency, Integrity Watch here in the Federal Capital Territory, for joining us on the conversations on Big Talk tonight. I remain your host, Edikan Michael. To stay with us.